Welcome to the Suncoast In-Depth Podcast. I'm Brett Watson, and today I'm joined by none other than Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus,
I put my hair up
here.
just so I wouldn't throw you off.
That's why I was actually upset that you were putting your hair up.
Yeah, just so you were going to start with that Jesus phrase.
Chase Bryner. I've known Chase since you were in what? Fourth grade?
Fourth grade, I think it was.
Yeah.
I rollerbladed down to your youth group.
Did you know the podcast? Did you ever watch the podcast where I talked about baptism?
I did, yeah.
Did you see your picture in it?
I did see, yeah, you threw it up there. I had people texting me like, oh, and I'm like, oh, man, I didn't even know you still had that picture.
Yeah. So we're talking about deconstruction and reconstruction, you know, the deconstruction of faith and reconstructing. I've been talking to several people now. And I know you have your story, but you texted me earlier and you said, I think my deconstruction story is kind of boring.
Yeah.
So can we talk about what to do to reconstruct? And I do want to get to that, but just give us your boring story anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll make a boring story somewhat interesting.
You will.
No, I've been hearing I've been watching a lot of the podcasts, and I've been hearing you use the phrase, don't throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And, as funny as that sounds, it does stick with you, that phrase. And I don't think I quite threw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. It just, when I threw the bathwater out, the Jesus was a lot different looking when he's got all that dirt off of him.
Okay,
You know what I
that's
mean?
fair, yeah.
So I've been looking
that.
at a different Jesus than I knew before.
Okay.
Just because all of the growing up, I mean, once I went to the church that you were attending, and you were doing youth pastor, and you were also, I think, assistant
Mm-hmm.
pastor. We went fourth grade. My mom and my dad, mainly, I think my mom was the one that was like, our kids are getting I'm the youngest of three. All of us are boys, and we were rowdy, and we had too much energy, and we kept breaking things. And so she's like, I need to get them involved in a better friend group, church. They grew up in church, but we weren't going as a family in my younger years. And so the one thing that she said is, there's free donuts. There's free donuts. There's orange juice. And we were like, man, all day. I'm tired of eating cereal. Yeah, let's go. And I remember going to church thinking it was cool. My oldest brother started playing guitar, and I always looked up to him. So I was like, I want to learn guitar. He started teaching me some of these songs that they were playing at this church. And, I'm learning, mainly focusing on trying to play the chord right. Yeah. But then eventually the lyrics are coming in, and I'm like, what do these lyrics mean? And there was always this wonder, but there was also this skeptic, mindset of, which I kind of liked, not being grown up so strictly in the church, because I got to approach it with a skeptic mind. Mm-hmm. But what I noticed right away going to a church was the relationships were a lot more healthy than the relationships I had just friends that I met at school. Because I was getting into a lot of trouble. We were lighting trees on fire, and we were just doing what bored kids do sometimes, I guess. I'm starting to realize that not all kids did that, but I didn't. I had a lot of time, and so I got into trouble until I started going to youth group and built these relationships that are I still have today. Mm-hmm. So that was the number one thing that I realized about church was relationships had a different depth than the relationships I was experiencing just going to public school. Mm-hmm. And so that's what kept making me come back was we only had a youth group, I think of, 12 kids, maybe even that. Yeah. Met in a little apartment complex. Mm-hmm. And humor was a big part of my family, and I immediately was being able to, connect with this group, find out that they loved to laugh, and we all just were making each other laugh. And then over time, I was like, okay, we got into music. I started, playing music with Ryan Parker, Chris Lemaster, which were two of my closest friends. And I was over at your house all the time, and we were playing in the back room. We were learning music. We got into rock and punk and
Screamo.
screamo. I mean, we got into everything. But when it came to like really diving into,
Remember when I put the mattress up?
you came
So I
in.
was trying to go to bed.
You were trying to sleep. Maybe this is too much, but yeah, I remember you poking your head in, and we're all like sweaty and playing, and you're like, "Shut the hell up!" And we laughed so hard. Yeah, I don't even think we wanted to play after that because we were laughing so hard. But yeah, I remember going to church for the relationships, and then getting into music, and then when it was like our time as musicians to like take over the worship band, because a lot of the worship band was leaving at the moment. We had to have been going into I don't know, maybe like 10th grade, somewhere around that, 10th grade. We started playing more, and I remember going to any church that would let us play, or if I could join the team, and just all the experience. I just wanted to have as much experience as I could. But what that did is it exposed me to so many different like
Traditions within Christianity.
yeah, to where I grew up just thinking like it's, in a sense, it's like going to a public school where you have so many different backgrounds, but there's this thing that holds them together in a sense. But it did, like, they were so dramatic where one church would say, this is the way you do things, and another church would say, this is the way you do things. And then I started diving into like what is dividing them. That's when I saw that this cart of Christianity has a wobbly wheel. Like,
Yeah.
I was like, man, there's a lot of people not on the same page. And I think my deconstruction started later on, because I went to college for worship. I like was sold. I was in it. I was like, I want to do this for a career. But then I started realizing that once the service is over and people walk out the door, they were different people than they were in those four walls. You know, we would sing together, or but out in the community, if somebody did something wrong, or if somebody did something that they were ashamed of, they got beat up. Or if they thought something differently, they got beat up. And it wasn't the non-Christians beating them up, it was the Christians beating them up. And then that's where the whole switch on the relationships I thought were so strong are actually kind of shallow. And where I'm seeing a lot more damage from one Christian to another Christian. And I'm thinking something's not adding up here, you know? And I remember asking myself, I'm like, why does it feel like I'm closer to this image of Jesus when I'm outside of the church? Started seeing that where more community outreach were done just from nonprofits, A lot of them were Christian, but they weren't claiming to be a Christian organization. And I'm like, why am I attracted to that? Why am I attracted to these things that are outside? Well, they didn't have that thing that was saying this is separating everybody that comes in the door. And that's why I think I say I didn't throw Jesus out, because I still really love Jesus. I love the story of Jesus. I love the I guess all of the wisdom that comes with studying Jesus and why he did what he did. And I think I'll always continually look into that story and always come back to it as a good foundation of one of the most, influential stories in my life, and I'll always be. I think I've let a lot more stuff in. So that's why I'm like, I deconstructed, but I also, a lot of my deconstruction was letting a lot more influence in. And seeing, okay, why does this group believe this thing? And naturally, some of my ideas have changed over time, but like I felt like God got so big that I feel like I've walked right up to a mountain and I'm just looking at the rock, to where I'm like, I don't know what I believe, but it's right there in front of me, So
That's a good way to put it.
I just think God became so big, and so I'm in the season of trying to take it all in, I guess, and figure out what has good foundation, and get rid of some of the bad. So I'm still in that deconstructive stage, but I don't think I'll ever get out of it. But I see a lot of good stuff in the teachings of Buddhism. I see a lot of good teachings in
Hinduism.
yeah, like all of these things that I'm taking in, where I'm like, okay, I see where they separate, where they differ, and I can understand that. But God's become a lot bigger to me, and I've seen Christ in so many more things that I'm like, man, the Christ that majority of the churches I grew up teaching, like the Christ that they taught, is very, very different. Like the Christ that I see today is in almost everything. And that's where I'm kind of at. But because he's in everything, I'm like, I don't know how to explain that to anybody. I don't know.
Right.
I lead worship on the weekends, and we're in this season of trying to write more music. And I tell Ricardo and Ryan, we'll get a good guitar riff, and we're like, all right, we just need lyrics. And I'm like, I don't know what to say about God anymore. Like, it's like it's like this big thing, And maybe that's where my next journey is like, yeah, I don't know how to describe who you are. I can only experience what I experience, kind of thing. Maybe it's more experience-based worship songs, but that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Is like growing up, taking as much as I could in, but then as I got older, realizing we're so divided in a church until, Suncoast was the first church, and I've said this to a few people. I was like, I don't know if I could work at another church. Right now,
think I could. Yeah.
Right now I work on the weekends and I help with music. But, I went in full-time doing something else, doing woodworking. And I've also had that thought in my head. I'm like, could I go back to be a full-time worship leader? I'm like, if it wasn't at Suncoast, I don't think I could, just because they've given me this space to say, bring all of your questions, bring all of your doubts, and bring your strengths, bring your joy, bring all of that. We want a part of it, because I feel like everybody has this pendulum that they're on and that they bring to, and the wider the pendulum swings, it helps that average kind of balance out. I'm like, I want the crazy people to come here that have these thoughts that are here, maybe not too crazy, but I do. I like people.
No, I know what you mean, though.
I like people who have a strong opinion that at the end of the day can say, my relationship is way more valuable than my opinion.
Yeah.
I think those are the most wisest people I've ever met, have been able to drop their opinion for the sake of the relationship. And I'm seeing that happen more and more, to where it's kind of exciting me again, to where I'm like, I'm ready. I have a lot of friends that have walked away from the church, and I have a lot of friends that are still in the church, to where I feel like I'm in this middle ground between both of them. And but I'm open to hear where they're coming from. So that's why my story is not too interesting, because I didn't hit one point where I'm like, I'm done with Christianity.
Yeah, I was saying to Kevin after we did our podcast, I said, I told him what you texted me, and he said, that's because he never really deconstructed, sounds like. And I said, no, it's just that he never got angry about it. And the relationships were more important. That's what I said.
Yeah, and still, I remember telling you this. I think some of the best. Oh, newbie! You got to silence your phone, Brad.
I did.
I think some of the most impactful pastors that I've ever listened to, the ones that I'm like, man, they're on another level. Like, they've let go of all of this baggage that comes with religion, because they are so driven for like loving people. Mm-hmm. Those are the pastors you never hear about. Those are it's not their I guess goal to be in the limelight, but they're just so hyper focused on loving people. And I've found that here, to where it's like I've learned more from Pastor Larry from just watching him when I worked here, watching him interact with people. You know, I've seen that with you where I remember being a kid, and this is still stuck in my head. I don't even remember what brought this up, but going to you and so worried I was going to hell. And I remember like, Brett, how do I know that I'm not going to go to hell? You know, I forget what the words you told me back then. It was something along the lines of the fact that you're even worried about this concept of hell is a good track that you're on. You know, kind of like I forget what the words you used, but I know it gave me comfort of like, why are you worried about this idea of hell when you have this great idea where, you know, this great thought bubble you could be looking into, and of the hope and the, you know, and the joy and the, I guess, the love of God instead of the fear of God, you know, and that stuck with me. I'm like, I don't want to live my life in fear and worry, because that's robbing me of joy right now. You know, it adds, I forget. I just heard a quote where it's like living in worry or worrying about something, it doesn't help your tomorrow. It steals your joy from the moment you are in right now. And I'm like, that's totally true. So I've kind of gotten rid of a lot of that, getting angry because of something, because I'm like, the moment we have it figured out, something comes out tomorrow where it's like, actually, it's changed. So I'm like, if I'm so strong-headed about something that I know I'll get crushed by if it doesn't come true, then I'm like, that's a weak foundation. I feel like, you know, because I want to be able to be open-minded through the whole process, because I'm like, who am I to know who God is, like, fully, you know, to say I have him figured out. I'm kind of excited about being proven wrong for the rest of my life. I really am. Like, it's going to be a part of my journey. I'm always going to be looking at, like, okay, how could you see something bigger than myself in this situation or this experience or whatever? You know, we've called him God, or, you know, this thing, you know, if it's like, I have no idea what's out there, you know, but I'm attracted to it. It's like a light, and I'm a bug, and I'm like, I got to figure out what this is. And, you know, I guess
so. What you're pointing out there is you're more interested in discovery.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I would say is important for reconstructing a sustainable faith, is that you dedicate yourself to being the kind of person that is excited about discovering what is true, not deciding ahead of time what you'd like to be true, but just discovering what is true and being excited about that.
Yeah.
Because the reality is the truth isn't going to change just because you want something different, right?
Yeah.
So you might as well accept it. This is, the Buddhists call it acceptance, you know.
Right.
But it's in all religion. And that's part of becoming enlightened.
Yeah.
You accept what you cannot control. And you dedicate yourself to discovering what can be known.
Yeah.
You know?
And I mean, the more and more I even look back, like, even if you take religion out of it and you just look at humanity, and when one group of humanity is talking about another group, whether it's like across the world and it's one news group talking about another news group, the idea you can get in your head about this certain area can be vastly wrong until you go over there and experience it.
So true.
So
and I'm guilty of that.
But it's just our imagination runs wild. You know, and, you know, when you're fed something, and I think that's kind of how I picture growing up in the church, was I was fed something from a pastor on a stage, but I was too lazy to do the work to fact check or to, I believed what I was told. And it's, you know, if you really know that pastor and you know where they're coming from and how much work they do to present the most accurate, you know, up-to-date, you know, translations of...
Try to be faithful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that's one thing. But for me as a kid, I was going to so many different churches to where I'm like, somebody's wrong. like, yeah. I mean, yeah. So I think... being able to not be so, lazy in your, your involvement. And that would help a lot of people avoid some of the deconstruction, mess.
Yeah.
And maybe it is because I didn't, my foundation, I wasn't so strong in my foundation to where I was like, I wasn't holding on to things so tightly because they didn't seem as important to me. But then you hear Jesus talk about like, well, you should have like a childlike faith. I'm like, kids don't care about the foundation of something. They're just there to experience that thing that's right in front of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going to approach the story of Jesus like that,
Yeah.
where I'm like, I didn't really care about the things that divided people until I started seeing a lot of like weapons thrown at each other. Then I'm like, come on. But I'm starting to see people come that have left the church come back and we're like, well, we missed something. We're missing something. They just don't know how to explain it, And I don't have the answers to tell them, I'm like, well, I'm here for you, when you come back to this relationship, if there was a divide and you come back and you're like, that was kind of stupid of me to ruin this relationship because of this thought or opinion. Where I'm like, well, you didn't ruin it for me. It's been here, But I think that is Jesus. That's a Christ action.
Christ likeness. Yeah.
To where I'm like, there's something there that I know is beyond myself. And maybe that is just seeing people that are wiser than me do that. That I'm like, that's the kind of person that I want to be. Because that's the most effective thing I think the church has ever done is welcome you in no matter what.
Yeah.
And also just love you,
Yeah.
So I don't know that I'm in that space. So I say all that, to where I'm like, I don't know in the span of deconstruction, reconstruction where I'm at, but I've held on to things that I think I'll probably hold on to for the rest of my life because I think they've been proven in my life through my experiences to be the thing that transcends your opinions and your individual thoughts. Is they thought to say, no matter what, outside of this stuff, I'm still gonna love you. I'm still gonna to show you that courtesy, that respect, because you are you and I am me, and I think you're a special person, and I can always learn something from anybody. And I've said that to multiple people because I'll go to a random place. I love going to a restaurant and by myself and just talking with somebody. It'll drive my friends. It'll drive Hope crazy because Hope, we go out and she's her social limit's a lot lower than mine.
Yeah.
And she gets some social anxiety, where I just welcome it. And same with I loved going to lunch with Stephen Shank, one of the drummers here, because oh man, I could just push him to the limit of his social anxiety, and it's so fun. But I could talk to anybody and learn something from somebody, and I've always enjoyed being able to do that. Just whether you're Christian or you're non-Christian, there's a story there. There's something valuable there.
Yeah. No, you're a people guy for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like for me, I'm a people guy. I love people. But I do have enough introversion that it wears me out.
Yeah.
I enjoy being with people and interacting with people like on a Sunday, but I got to go home and take a nap.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. I have high highs and low lows. I come home and I'm just like, I need nobody talk to me. I just want to pet my dog and stare at my phone watching YouTube. Probably that's my everyday when I crash.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But I guess my big thing as I was thinking about, okay, we're going to talk about deconstruction, is how do I examine where I'm at, and is there a way to avoid certain pains in the process?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Because suffering in this life, right? Adversity, hardship, whatever you want to call it, is inevitable to some degree. So I like to make a distinction between necessary suffering or unavoidable suffering and unnecessary suffering.
Right.
That usually has something to do with self-inflicted suffering, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, how can I deconstruct these beliefs this belief system or whatever that I don't find tenable anymore, and not suffer unnecessarily in the process? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So, a lot of the suffering, I think, is curtailed by first making that intention to be a person of truth. You want to know what is true as best you can. And part of that is admitting what you don't know,
Right.
admitting the things that you cannot know, and then striving to know what you can.
So I hear that because I have a few friends that have aimed to make that their goal. But the moment they do that, it's like in the Christian world, it's like the moment you, for the sake of discovering truth, you bring out this stuff, you get torn apart. So how do you do that? Because once you're torn apart by the group of people that you're wanting to understand more, and the God that they serve and love, the moment that relationship is broken, it's really hard.
It is.
So how do you safely, in a sense, I mean, I guess it comes down to picking your environment and your group around you, I guess.
Some of it does, but you don't know how a person is going to react necessarily, right?
Yeah.
If you say all of a sudden, I don't believe in penal substitutionary atonement, or just as an example, I'm not sure that Jesus physically raised from the dead. If you're in a relationship with somebody that's just going to, they're not going to be able to swallow that, and you're afraid they'll cut off the relationship, I guess the question I would ask myself is, then how strong is that relationship? And is it something I want to keep working on, or is it something that I can just kind of let go and change my environment and the group of people that I'm around,
Yeah. I guess the reason why I am interested in that is because I've been in that situation, and I've chose in the past, I've chose to to kind of put a lid on that in that instance, like whatever it was, whatever I could sense that my yearning for a certain truth and the thing that I wanted to get and say out loud to somebody, I knew would hinder that relationship. So I have this internal battle because I've done that in the past, and then years down the road, maybe we had distance, from then because, like if I'm on this journey, and I'm just spitting out these thoughts and stuff, they're going to either think I'm crazy or whatever. But a few years down the road, we reconnect, and they're in a different period of time. And had I ruined that relationship, we would have never had that moment.
Yeah.
To reconnect and to be able to grow together in a situation.
So that's really good, right? So what you see on, let's say, TikTok a lot is you see these people that have deconstructed and they're angry, and the way they react in their anger is to be sarcastic and
Right.
Demeaning toward their prior community and their beliefs, right? So you can avoid a lot of pain and a lot of broken relationships by really trying not to do that. And if you struggle with that, consider what the scriptures say, that Christ is all and is in all.
It's another big statement.
The people that you feel so angry towards, maybe they've hurt you, whatever, and all that may be true. But at the end of the day, choosing to depart from the relationship is choosing to depart from Jesus, from Christ, from the Christ, at least at that point of interaction with him.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah. That's crazy. Well, I mean, that's another statement where I'm like, God becomes bigger. But how many people can actually follow through with that? You know? Like, and I've seen it more often than not where like, or I've seen it not happen in situations where a lot of my friends get upset at a certain group or whatever. And it's like, oh, I saw this wall go up. And I'm seeing all these walls go up. And I'm like, well, I don't think this is going to help at all. You know?
That's the thing. It doesn't help. Kevin and I were just talking about this too.
Yeah.
Like politically, I can get so angry, and I like to think that I'm a fairly enlightened guy. And then I run into some political nonsense and I'm like, God, I get so angry. Why? I take some time and ask that question.
I think you need
Why?
a punching bag. I think that's what you need
I
at
need
home.
something.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, all I can say for myself in that arena is it helps to ask why. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Where are these feelings coming from? You know?
Yeah. And maybe maybe I just have to talk with people about what's going on in my head sometimes feels like just a big yarn ball. You know, it's just very like, sporadic. My thoughts go from one end to another and they just jump all over the place.
That's because your ADD is unmedicated.
Probably. I don't know. But I ask myself why to the point where I feel like I just walk around in circles. That's why I say I don't know where I'm at on the deconstruct and reconstructive like
spectrum.
Chart. Yeah, because I keep asking myself why, and I end up way back here or over here. And some days I feel like I've deconstructed, and some days I feel like I'm running towards that reconstructive line. And then Sunday comes and I'm singing songs, and I'm a part of this group that is helping bring people together for a moment, you know, and, you know, also part of a team that's writing music. And I'm like, you have this pressure of feeling like you should have everything together, but then you ask yourself why so much where you're like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say because why this? And I'm probably a slow learner too. So I could spend my whole life learning, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with spending my whole life like being wrong and being right.
There's another foundational thing to avoid some pain. Be okay with being a lifelong learner.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You if you have it figured out right now, I feel like that's the worst place to be. And that's where I see pastors fail. That's where I see hyper or super active Christians fail when they say, I have everything figured out, because the moment something comes in, they fall apart. And I mean, you see it in celebrity Christians where the moment something in their life comes up that is probably in over 50% of humanity is probably going through a lot of the same things, even though they're messed up, you know, whether it's, you know, outside of they're slipping up in their marriage or they're introducing drugs into their life or whatever. It's like that stuff happens every single day. They're on this pedestal because they're Christian influence, but at the end of the day, they're also a human being.
Yeah.
And I've just seen people start throwing rocks, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, man, come on, we're better than this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm on that journey. And so when I'm writing songs or singing up there, you can usually tell if I'm questioning in that day, if I'm questioning a song, because
you mean like the lyrics?
Whether it's lyrics, we don't really do songs much anymore that, you know how to silence that thing, right?
I do. And I turned the notifications off, but I don't think I silenced the...
That's an Android thing.
Shuddy.
But when I'm singing on stage, you could usually tell when I'm battling something, because if I'm really connected to that thought, that moment, like I wear my feelings on my sleeve when I'm singing, you know, and it's usually very evident, or it's like, he did okay on that one. Probably because I'm chewing my head. I'm like, why am I singing this? I don't want to sing this, you know. But we've gotten rid of a lot of those songs, you know, since. Yeah. And but I guess, writing new songs for the future, and I'm in that reconstructive phase of realizing that a lot of our community has gone through a deconstruction process, and a lot of my friends, and that's, I guess, more so what I'm speaking out of is my close friend group. I see them in that realm of deconstruction, and I'm like, how do I vocally or lyrically write something that can help a community reconstruct when, I don't even know where I guess I'm at on that scale. What are, I guess, a good direction, because I know you've been in music for a long time, but what is a direction from somebody who has done music and wrote songs, but has also been a pastor for years? What's a direction for me as somebody who is less studied, but also has a drive to be like, I want to connect to something bigger, but in a healthy way.
Yeah.
Because I've sang songs for years that I know were so destructive. Like I was a megaphone to deconstruction for so many years, just based off of the lyrics that the church wanted to hear. To where I'm like, I don't know if I want that responsibility, but on the other hand, I have this challenge in my head to that. There's things I can sing about, like you read a lot of the Psalms where it's doubt, it's frustration, it's the wrestling with God, it's all of that. But if you get into a season where you're just singing those songs, then I can sense the whole place get heavy.
Sure.
And I'm sensing that now, where a lot of the environments that I'm leading worship at, there's this heavy feeling, and I know Larry for the past year or 2 years has been like wanting to steer the ship into saying, this, I want to lighten this heavy load that's our congregation has had.
Yes.
But I guess I'm trying to figure out a direction, or at least an idea where to go.
So just to throw one out there, right? As soon as you said you see Christ everywhere, right? I thought that'd be a good song direction.
Yeah.
I see you, and it could be a play on seeing Christ in others, but also the message that I see you.
Yeah. The individual.
Yeah. I see you, and I see you. Because what mature Christianity really has said from its inception really is everything is one. Everything is one. God is one. Judaism.
Yeah.
God is one. Okay. And what do they mean by that? Everything begins with this singularity that is God. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Even the bad stuff? Yeah, even the bad stuff.
Right.
Okay. It all emanates from the one. So the direction, but it's in diversity. Okay. So it's unity manifest in diversity.
Right. I think the diversity has been, that's probably been the most attractive thing about the church for me in the past year. That's honestly what I've been looking at, because I had a close friend kind of pull back from the church, and I remember one of the things, once he pulled back from the church, one of the things he said, I want to be a part of, it was like I forget what kind of environment, it was like a workout environment or something. I want to be a part of that. I want to leave that, and I want to be a part of this. It was like a workout group or something, because I just want to be together around people that I can go and not feel like I'm judged, and that we're challenging each other, and it's just like a good environment. I'm like, that's what the church is supposed to be. You know, you're leaving one thing to go to another thing. It's just once you go and you become a part of that group, you're going to realize that probably 40% of them live in the same community, or probably a Christian, or they all have different opinions. And then what happens when you get to see all their diversity, all their individual hang-ups and all that? Like, what happens when you truly see somebody, and you don't like it?
Yeah.
You're just going to leave, I think that's the biggest thing that I've held on to with Christianity is we're supposed to be unified, We're supposed to love everybody else like you love yourself. And that's, I know what the goal is. And when you don't see it enough, then you're like, what the heck, But I'm seeing a lot of my friends leaving a community that their aim is to be so diverse and to be welcoming and to leave that and to go into
like Suncoast. You're talking about Suncoast, right?
Yeah.
The aim is to be all inclusive, open to everybody, and yet you see some friends leaving that. But
not so much anymore. I just in the past I have it to where I'm listening to the people who are deconstructing, and a lot of their reasoning doesn't make sense to me. So I'm just in this place of like, well, it doesn't make sense. I get hanging up on or leaving the church because you're a part of an environment that says, no, this is our way or the high,
Yeah,
it's
that ends up being toxic or something.
Yeah, it's saying you can't think anything different than we think. I get wanting to leave that.
Leave,
Yeah. But when you're in a community where it's just like where are you at as an individual? Here's our opinion. Here's what the Bible says. Here's what Jesus taught. Here's what history around this whole story. Here's what that says. Here's what science says. And they say, here's our opinion on it. And where are you at on this journey? And hey, I'll talk to you next week. Like, and tell me what you find out. That's why I've loved these podcasts is I'm getting to see different people who I don't normally talk to. I get to hear their story a little bit and still see them on a weekend doing their thing, serving, doing like, even in the midst of deconstruction, they're holding on to something. And I think a lot of it's relationships.
Yes.
And I think that's why Suncoast highlights community over church in a sense, where it's like, we're going to be full of the people who you can't escape. They're in your community. It's more so about learning to grow with them. And I don't know, that I guess is what I'm holding on to. And that's the Christ that I'm holding on to. And I'm sure I could find that in another community, but this one's mine,
Yeah.
But
yeah. I'm sure you could.
Yeah.
But I do think that Suncoast is unique. I've been doing this a long time, and it is hard to find a place where that you don't have to agree with what's taught from the stage.
Yeah.
You don't have to, and you're still absolutely welcome here, 100%.
Yeah. But I've been shaped just by positive relationships. I have, because you approach me with something you're very angry about that I did. It's like this wall goes up, and I'm like, I've learned to overcome that like shut down mode, because I'm like, well, where are they coming from? And now I'm in a community where I'm okay with being wrong, and I'm not so forceful at being right. And, I'm not going to beat you over the head, because I'm learning that this community is just full of a bunch of people with the pendulums are swinging like this. And I feel like we're balancing each other out, but it's a long run.
So you just described another foundation, right? You just described another way to reconstruct something that's sustainable. You coupled it with being truthful. In this case, being truthful about the nature of people. People are pendulums. They swing back and forth.
People are pendulums. That's a song right there.
Yeah. And you also stated another one. You also stated another foundational thing, and that is unity in the sense of dialogue, staying in relationship.
Yeah.
Keeping that space open for dialogue, so that because without dialogue, you can't understand one another, right?
Right.
Because there's no communication going on.
Yeah. Unless you're really good at like
telepathy or something.
Yeah.
But there are a few of us that can do that.
Yeah.
I can.
I knew it.
That's because I told you. Anyway, so that's another important foundational principle. And I think it's important to point this out too, that it's one thing to be dogmatic, where you have a set of beliefs that people have to sign off on, and being principle-based, right? So principle-based would be like, I think I talked to Ricardo about this. I'm going to commit myself to discovery. I'm going to try to look for what I can know.
Right.
I'm going to admit what I don't know and what I cannot know. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to strive for what I can know.
Right.
And and by that, you could break that down, right? I'm going to try to know myself in that too.
Right.
And where my biases are and where I try to confirm those biases.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that will get in the way of my goal to be a person of truth.
Right.
And,
I remember,
so that's a principle for living, right? That's not a dogma. That's not like you have to believe in the Trinity or you're going to hell. Athanasian Creed,
Right. I think you said in Ryan Bachum's podcast, you were talking about there might still be walls, and they're going to be smaller because sometimes boundaries are good.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to like principles, for me, it's almost like hey, just focus on this area right now in this moment. Focus on this area. It is a boundary for me. But I mean, principle based. I mean, that's kind of in my mind. That's the imagery I get is like you do have to have some focus. You need to have you need to have focus and intention in certain areas. And when I do shine light into those areas, whether you're a Christian or not, I mean, I think that's globally recognized. I have a guy I watch online sometimes, and he'll have Buddhists, he'll have witches on his podcast. He'll have so many different things. And
who is that?
Duncan Trussell.
Oh, yeah. I still haven't watched him, but yeah.
Yeah. One of the funniest guys I know. I don't know him, but one of the funniest guys I listen to just because his character is so unique. But he always goes back to, highlighting Jesus. And you can recognize just based off of the principles that he lived, he's a good dude. And I think any wise religious leader across the world would realize that, Yes. And I'm sure Jesus would say that about a lot of other world religions,
Yes.
And that's the unity that I'm like, that's what I'm longing for.
Yeah.
I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I think you're right.
That's what I'm holding on to. That's the baby Jesus I'm holding on to.
You're not going to find very many people who say, Jesus, I hate that guy.
Right.
That know anything about him, right?
Yeah.
You never run into people that just say, what a jerk that Jesus is, And so he's a good person to hold on to.
I guess it depends on who was your pastor and what church you grew up in.
I guess, but look, it's hard to read the Gospels and walk away thinking that Jesus was a jerk. I mean, it just is.
Yeah.
And so that's a good person to hold on to for sure.
Yeah.
And that's really what I mean by don't throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater. Why throw him out? He's such a good person that contributed so much to what is good about humanity, right?
Yeah.
Like he was so good at, I guess at the end of the day, he's just so good at loving people, but also teaching in a way that met people right where they were,
Yeah.
and didn't place expectations on them.
So that's the way you worded it, is meeting people where they are. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's what we're not taught growing up in church. It was always like the Evangel Cube, where you have the story of Jesus, and it's like when you
by the way.
When you interact with somebody, you were my youth pastor, so yeah. But here's the thing: it's like we were on another side of the world. We didn't know the language. We were on a mission trip. We got these Evangel Cubes,
and we were being led by a mission group.
So I understand the reasoning about having these things that say Jesus did all this thing and he died on the cross so that you couldn't burn in hell. And there's a picture of like somebody like, I understand at the time why that was a thing, but that it's
Every
not.
time that comes up, I just start laughing. The idea that God would just burn someone for eternity, why did we hold on to that?
And the last cube is like, well, you could avoid all that, But I think meeting people where they're at is what we're not taught, because some people you should not show an Evangelii cube to.
Yeah, that's
I don't think you should in general, but
right. Yeah.
I'm just using it as I feel like relationships could be lifelong, and their journey could be nobody's going to go at the speed of light. So why are you going to force this thing down their throat, ruin that relationship? Because you could have had a positive experience. It just probably would have took 6 months, a year, Yeah. But here's the universal thing is this thing called love. And I've seen love transform lives way more, and this
than dogma.
Than dogma.
In
yeah.
Evangelii cubes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to some degrees, the Bible, when it's used the wrong way.
Yes. It can be very dangerous. Yeah.
To where I'm like, Christians are running off Christians. And just because we're not taught in a sense of being able to say, it's okay that we're not on the same page, and it's okay, your journey, this door might not even open to you right now. It could be 2 years down the road, but I'm going to love you either way. I feel like that's, based off experience, that's been the most effective way to be Christ. But it's just, that's what I'm seeing people leave because they're like, I'm not on the same page as you, and you guys don't like that, so I'm going to leave because I can go to the mall or a bar or whatever, and that group of people is a lot more accepting and loving, Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, for anyone that might be watching this, I don't know how to say this to actually drive it home, the truth of it, right? Suncoast really, truly is an open. They will accept you where you are and where you go.
Right.
Right. So it's not just about meeting you where you are and then trying to change you.
Yeah.
We won't do that.
Yeah. And it's unique. It is the most unique community I've been a part of because it really is. It's like you leave the building, you go out and you see somebody from Suncoast. Like I grew up in so many different churches to where if I saw somebody from a church, I kind of cringe,
yes.
Am I being the person they want me to be?
Yeah.
Here it's like it really is a community to where if I'm going out, somebody sees me, it's like,
yeah.
Well, it is. I don't have to put on a face.
Right.
I don't have to, whatever. It feels like a real, like I'm living a truer life because I don't have to remember which face to put on, and I've really enjoyed that, and I think that's why I'm not giving it up. It's really relationships. Mm-hmm. It's I'm seeing people strive to be more like Christ, and that Christ example is something that I think transcends just the average relationship. It's when you don't want to do something, you have those foundations or whatever, that these teachings that Jesus taught to say, hey, you can live like this, but if you really want to live, try this, and if you can't do it today, keep, working on this area or whatever. It's not a race, and you're not going to burn in hell if tomorrow you get hit by a car, and that was always the scary part. It's like, I have to save as many people as I can today because tomorrow I could get hit by a car and my number's going to be low. Yeah. But to get up there, Jesus is like, hey, you only saved 3 people. Yeah. But.
One of the things that I say to people that are new, we have a lot of new people that come here, right?
Yeah.
And many of them come from Christian backgrounds, right? And one of the things that I say that they're always like, I don't know how to take that, so maybe I shouldn't say it. I don't know. You tell me what you think. I'll say, I've worked in several Christian environments, loved them all for different reasons. Right? Loved the people there for different reasons. Mm-hmm. But I've never worked in any of them that had where the community was so Christ-like as this one.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they take that as judgmentalism against other places or.
I mean, I think every church is full of people that are like Suncoast, but a lot of them are afraid to be a true version of themselves. And here, when you say you don't have to, then you get to see really interesting growth. Like
Exactly. Yes.
I grew up
You're actually free to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I went to a public school, but I was always a class clown, and I ended up developing when it came to trying to fit in and appease my teachers and whatever. It's like I could never. I always acted like I was smarter than I actually was, because I wasn't putting the time in to learn a lot of this stuff. But I guess I'm seeing people grow past when you have all these like fake, you're spending more energy trying to
be somebody you're not.
Yeah, that I'm not growing at all. I'm not learning anything. Oh. I've spent most of my time just like
pretending like I am.
Yeah. To where when it comes to like, I wish I could redo school because I have such a better, I guess, outlook on it now. Because I do love learning. I just, I've learned that later on in life. But when I see Suncoast, I see people.
I'm 55 years old and I'm in college, so I get it.
Yeah. I think you just you're a late bloomer on that in that area
for sure.
But no, I see that in Suncoast, and I'm really proud to be a part of a not necessarily a race, but I'm glad to be a part of just the journey and knowing that if I venture way over here, most likely there's 20 other people that have ventured that way. That's whether before me or after me or right there with me. And there's people way over on this side taking this other path. And the fact that we can talk about it, I think keeps us, in a sense, together. And a lot of my friends that have walked away from different churches, I love the fact that I could still talk to them, And I want to be the person that you hear about, like on the news, where I think it was actually there was a story a long time ago. It was like this Amish family that one of their family members got killed, and then they talked to the person who committed the murder or whatever, forgave him. I'm like, whoa, like that gives me chills because I'm like, would I have that strength? Could I love somebody that much? Could I forgive somebody that much? I'm like, if I'm going to a spiritual gym, or if I'm looking at the Christ example, I'm like, what's kind of motivating him? I don't know if I'd be that strong right now, but I want to get there, and maybe I would. I feel like I keep relationships more than some of the people around me based off of I avoid conflict because I don't really care about creating the conflict. So I want to be a better version of myself, and here that's what I'm experiencing. Whether I'm right or wrong, I'm not getting beat up along the way, and that's nice.
It is nice, and I guess we've laid out a lot of suggestions for people, really.
Welcome to my brain.
Yeah. But it's been really good. And the last one that you're kind of highlighting there is the principle of love. So striving to understand and be love, which is a lifelong process because love is complex.
Yep.
But striving to understand and be love. Who's going to argue with that principle?
Nobody, or else. Oh, wait.
That's right. But hey, I love you.
Love you too, man. Thanks for having me on here.
Appreciate you.